This film is intended for eye surgeons for training and education purposes. Viewer discretion is strongly recommended. Hi, let me take you through an eventful surgery where I had an intraoperative posterior capsular tear which was unexpected, and let's see how it was managed. Now, this was an 88-year-old lady who is having this nuclear cataract, pseudoexfoliation, moderately dilating pupil. I have given her subconjunctival lidocaine injection simply because she was a little bit uncomfortable and nothing alarming. It didn't look any dramatically difficult case. It just looked like an average case, and I was not expecting any difficulty in this patient at all. The rexus is done, the hydrodissection is performed, and the nucleus management is begun. So it seems to be working well as of now. There's nothing significant happening. So the last piece of the nucleus is out, and at this point, the patient starts to cough a little bit. Suddenly I feel that the eye is becoming firmer and the cough is incessant. She is continuously coughing, and the raised intrathoracic pressure has definitely caused some amount of positive pressure. So I go in and during cortex aspiration, I'm very, very careful. I also appreciate the fact that the posterior capsule has come in anteriorly, so there is definitely a positive thrust which is very much felt. I want to be as careful as possible during cortex aspiration. One part of the cortex is gone, and unfortunately for me at this stage, there is a nuclear fragment, a small one, flies out from the edge of the side port to the center part. And now I'm trying to aspirate this remaining lens matter by crushing it with my bimanual I&A cannula. And during this time, as the crushing process is going on, what has escaped my attention is probably that the posterior capsule also has come forward anteriorly, and I presume that there was a moment of a micro surge. Even though the port is facing anteriorly, it has caught the posterior capsule, and now I have a rent. And this was heartbreaking. The entire case is done, the last few minutes of the surgery, and you have a scenario like this. The first thing would be first of all, you need to acknowledge that there is a PC tear. I had to come out from the stage of denial and accept this fact. Now is not the time to argue it out. How can it happen? My port is facing up, I'm above the anterior capsule. No, it has happened now. So there's no point of debating that in our head. So what do I do now? The situation is I don't want to get into a much more worse situation than what it is. At this stage, I don't know about the vitreous state, whether the anterior halide also is ruptured. Looking at the configuration of the posterior capsular tear, doesn't look like the anterior halide is ruptured. I'm not sure about it. But before coming out, I need to ensure that the chamber does not collapse. So I have to withdraw my aspiration port, but unfortunately it is still tugging at the contents of the anterior chamber and also including the lens matter which is adjacent to the posterior capsular tear. First I have to press the reflux button, and then once the contents of the anterior chamber are disengaged, then I have to pull it out. OVD is introduced into the eye through the right hand side port, then the irrigation is stopped, and then the cannula is pulled out. I go in with the OVD through the main incision again to put it back. So now is the time to take that 1 minute pause and now strategize your plan. First one, let us analyze the scenario. PC tear is glaring at me. There is a cortex which is overlapping the posterior capsular tear. At this stage, I don't know whether the vitreous phase is intact or not. So how do I proceed? Should I put in OVD and try to aspirate the cortex first? Or should I go in and do a vitrectomy and then do the cortex aspiration? If vitrectomy, should I go use the limbal incision or should I make a fresh pars plana entry? So these are all the options which will be going on in my head. So this 1 minute silence is going to help me out to plan my strategy. The first thought was probably the vitreous phase is still intact. So I thought, let me take off the cortex which is there in this quadrant. And the moment I enter with the irrigation cannula, for my bad luck, two small tiny lens particles again float up, which is stuck in the side port. They float up and come to the center of the anterior chamber. Now my concern is these should not get into the vitreous cavity. So I come in, I needed to take care of this, and I thought the best possible way would be to burp them out using an OVD. So when we push the OVD to burp this out, there is always a risk of extending the posterior capsular tear or rupturing the anterior hilar, because the OVD which you're trying to put in can also go into the posterior capsular tear. Now this is a dispersive OVD and I'm consciously putting it well above the pupillary margin so that the chance of the OVD getting inside the posterior capsular tear is minimized. The two tiny particles are burped out now. So what is the next stage? Should I try aspirating the cortex or should I do something else? So there is another few seconds of pause and I'm thinking. When you think, you just go in and put in a little bit of OVD. The options which I am zeroing in now is, why shouldn't I do a posterior capsulorhexis? The reason why I'm thinking is, the moment we have a posterior capsulorhexis, the chances of extension of the tear during any further maneuver would be minimized. Now with a dispersive OVD, I know that the vitreous face or the vitreous, if it is already prolapsed, is pushed back. There is no evidence of vitreous as of now near the vicinity of the posterior capsular tear, as is clearly evident by the morphology of the posterior capsular tear. So I thought this is the best time to perform the posterior capsulorhexis. So stabilize the globe with my second instrument and then go in and hold on the flap which is loose and then complete the rhexis. So now we have a central posterior capsulorhexis. Now this posterior capsular tear had very weak edges. Now we converted into a rhexis which has got very strong margins, and this is extremely unlikely to enlarge. So what advantage would we have? Because the posterior capsular tear will not enlarge, we can safely place the lens in the bag itself. Now with the OVD which I have placed, the cortex has been displaced to the periphery, and now I can go ahead and complete the cortex aspiration. She's still coughing and complains of a little bit of a breathlessness as well, and we have started her on oxygen and hopefully she should be better, but it is taking a longer time than what I usually would expect. Now at this stage, my assumption is that the vitreous face is still intact, or at least if it is broken, the vitreous has not prolapsed into the anterior chamber. So I go in with my bimanual I&A. The bottle height is kept very low at 40 centimeters and I'm trying to aspirate the cortex. A very slow vacuum of about 100 and a flow rate of 20. I'm trying to aspirate this cortex. The key is to avoid any fluctuation of the anterior chamber. And look at the position of the irrigation cannula. It is facing the angle away from the pupillary area. Slowly but steadily, the cortex which was there under the right side port is aspirated out. The chamber is still filled very much with OVD, and at this stage it's very difficult for me to still come to a conclusion whether vitreous is prolapsed out or not. There's a small bit of cortex still there in the peripheral part near the opposite quadrant. I retract the iris and very carefully and slowly the strip of cortex is aspirated out. So now is the time to place the lens. Before placing the lens, I'd like to confirm the absence of vitreous prolapse. The best way to judge is to use a triamcinolone acetate. I go in and use the triamcinolone acetate and I'm trying to wash it away and try to identify any vitreous strand, but it's not very clear. The problem of using OVD is sometimes it makes identification of the vitreous very difficult because the triamcinolone wouldn't stay in the vitreous because of the presence of the OVD. So I'm just trying to irrigate out all the OVD now, and I want to repeat the staining. Majority of the OVD is out now. Time to restain with triamcinolone acetate. This is a diluted triamcinolone acetate. We use a dilution of 1:5, and well, lo and behold, So it was confirmatory that the vitreous is indeed present now, and time to perform the antivitrectomy. So I go in with my cutter. The usual starting position is usually I go in with my bevel down and start doing the cut. And once after a few cuts, I'm just taking care of the air bubble. So you can see now the bevel of the cutter is facing down. The position is below the posterior capsule. The cutting rate is 4000. The aspiration flow rate is around 14. The vacuum is 200. After a minute or so, the bevel of the cutter is changed to sideways first and then anteriorly. I can see that one edge of the posterior capsular rhexis is kinked, suggesting that the vitreous is prolapsing out through that edge and it is going towards the main incision. There is a small trick which I'd like to share with you when you're trying to deal with a single strand of vitreous, as in this case. The kink is because the vitreous is prolapsing towards the incision, and that's the reason why the kink is present. Of course, the vitreous strand is not visible. So in this situation, I would prefer to change the settings to the IA cut mode. The idea is by going this IA cut mode, you're going to engage the vitreous strand first and then you cut it. It's like cutting with the scissors. So the cutter is moved towards the strand and then you press on the foot pedal. A little bit of a vacuum builds up to engage that vitreous strand and then you cut it. And immediately you can see that the shape of the posterior capsular tear changes and now it becomes circular. So looking at the morphology of PC tear does give us a hint about the possibility of a vitreous strand being present and the location as well. What is the end point of antivitrectomy? Once I note that there is no more kinking or deformity of the posterior capsular tear, and once the antechamber starts to flutter a little bit in spite of being working at the same bottle height, it suggests that the antechamber is free of all the vitreous gel and as well as the OVD. That should be the end point. See, our goal is not to remove the entire vitreous, just enough so that it wouldn't come back and prolapse again. Time to place in the lens. And I'm going to inflate the bag with sodium hyaluronate. So this is going to ensure that I've got enough space to maneuver the haptics into the bag but away from the area of the posterior capsular tear. Of course, it can also be done with HPMC, but there is always a risk of losing the chamber, and when the AC becomes shallow, the posterior capsule will come forward and then we lose the anatomy of the capsular bag, and there is always a risk of pushing the haptic through the edges of the posterior capsular tear or sometimes enlarging it. So I would always prefer sodium hyaluronate because it ensures that the bag is formed and maintained well enough. The IOL which I'm going to use here is the single piece hydrophobic lens which was originally planned. The lens is loaded and time to put in the lens. It's important to remember that the eye would be very soft when we've done a vitrectomy. If need be, it's always better to enlarge the incision a little bit. Because this cartridge is slightly smaller than the 2.8 incision, I thought it's alright to go in. So I'm just trying to ensure that I see well as the distal haptic is being negotiated under the anterior capsule. The haptic is landed well and truly into the bag. The visualization will not be great, will not be having good control. I go in and refill the chamber with OVD and then dial the lens in so that the trailing haptic gets into the bag. I just align the lens appropriately. Now is the time to go back and remove the OVD. Now, common question asked is, when you put in OVD with the posterior capsule open, even after doing vitrectomy, it's natural for the OVD to get into the vitreous cavity. Should we go ahead and remove it? Well, it's optional, but I always prefer to remove it for two reasons. You have lesser inflammation post-op and also lesser chances of the IOP spike. So I would prefer, but if you're not comfortable, fine. In this case, I'm just lifting the lens with the cutter itself. The bevel of the cutter or the mouth is facing posteriorly as I'm cutting and aspirating all the OVD which is pumped in behind the posterior capsule in the vitreous cavity. Then the bevel is turned anteriorly and the OVD which is behind the lens but in the capsule bag is being aspirated out. Of course, it's much more easier to do this job with a bimanual I&A cannula than the cutter itself, because the bimanual I&A cannula have a curve which is much more ergonomically very efficient to maneuver it. But nevertheless, cutter comes in handy simply because in the presence of any vitreous prolapse, you can again use the same device to deal with it. The posterior capsule tear now looks like a spindle shaped, primarily because the posterior capsule has become a little bit of a floppy after vitrectomy, and that's the reason why it behaves like that. The shape keeps on changing. I lift the lens again and go in and aspirate all the OVD which is there. In such cases, I think you need to tell yourself that you want to finish the case well. So I don't want to leave any residual irritants later on, whether it be a Cortex or Visco. I just want to clean up the antechamber as much as I can. So the OVD in front of the lens in the antechamber is also evacuated. Before closing, one more last time I'd like to confirm the absence of any vitreous by using this diluted triamcinolone acetate. It looks fine. So I'm just trying to irrigate and remove all the triamcinolone acetate which is there. At this stage, I'm very happy to see that the rhexis looks round and well centered. The good thing is, although it's in the visual axis, the edges of the PCC are quite away from the visual axis. So that should not be a problem. So as I keep saying, in cases where we have complications, it's important to finish well. In this case, I'm going to close the main incision with a tenon suture, bury it, remove the air bubble. One last check to ensure that the haptics are in the bag and well centered. A couple of drops of pilocarpine to get the pupil round. Intracameral antibiotics are placed, and that's it, the case is done. So these are the first day post-op pictures. There is some amount of corneal edema here, but the patient's vision is around 6/18 and she's doing well. So to revise in this case, the first thing was, this probably would be avoidable if the moment the patient started coughing and noticed that there is a significant positive pressure, I would have just come back and waited for her to settle down for a few minutes. Maybe even if it is worthwhile to make 5 minutes or 8 minutes just to settle down. Number 2, whenever we have a posterior capsule with a tear which has a flap, it is worthwhile to attempt the posterior capsule rhexis, because the moment we do a posterior capsule rhexis, the strength of the tear is amazing. So you can be dead sure that it's unlikely to enlarge during any subsequent maneuver. If we don't do the rhexis at that stage, there is always a risk of this enlarging at every stage, even including the stage at which we put the lens in the bag. So at the first opportunity, try to perform the posterior capsule rhexis. In this case, I was lucky that there is not much of a vitreous prolapse in the initial phases, and it could be pushed back with a dispersive OVD, and then I could complete the posterior capsule rhexis. One caveat is that doing the posterior capsule rhexis after the vitrectomy is a little difficult, because once we don't have a posterior support for the posterior capsule, which happens after vitrectomy and the eye becomes very soft, it's really difficult for us to control the posterior capsular rhexis tear very efficiently. So I would rather prefer to do it at the earliest stage before doing vitrectomy if the opportunity is present. Of course, if there is vitreous prolapse and the vitreous is coating everywhere in antechamber, then that is not an ideal situation where the posterior capsule rhexis should be attempted. Once the PC rhexis was done here, then we were sure that the rhexis tear wouldn't enlarge. We managed the cortex and then did the limited anterior vitrectomy and placed the lens into the bag. So that was it. Thank you for watching and hope you found this helpful.